Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast. I'm joined today by Christian Seufert, Head of Advanced Synthesis at Lonza and a member of the Executive Committee, leading a team that applies 125 years of chemistry expertise to manufacturing small molecules, highly potent APIs and ADCs, having spent 20 years at BASF, specialty chemical business. Lonza, under the leadership of their new CEO, is making a lot of strategic changes, including, of course, their One Lonza strategy, which we're going to talk about. Christian, welcome to the podcast today. Great to have you here.
Nice to be here, Luke. Thanks for having me.
Let's start off then talking about One Lonza, the overarching strategy behind the business, and how does the new advanced synthesis platform sit within that overarching vision?
Thanks for the question. Really exciting. Pharmaceutical industry is a super exciting space, $1.2 trillion in revenue, growing attractively. And I think there continues to be a trend towards outsourcing. We estimate that the market for pharmaceutical CDMO services is growing somewhere between 8 and 10%. And at Lonza, we want to grow faster than that. We have the ambition to outgrow the market. And we described certain characteristics that we define under the One Lonza engine that fuel this outperformance. And I think interesting to know it's 5 key characteristics. We really want to differentiate through a high performance team, people with a lot of experience. We have around about 20,000 associates working for Lonza with loads of experience, both on the technical side, but also in supporting our clients in their development efforts. We pride ourselves to have a strong scientific, technological, and digital ecosystem that we want to build out, have unparalleled customer partnerships, end-to-end execution excellence, and a scalable plug-and-play investment capabilities. And I think this One Lonza engine makes us unique. And One Lonza means across our 3 business platforms, 8 modalities, we want to offer to our clients a seamless One Lonza experience.
Talking then about advanced synthesis, where does that sit within those different business units?
I mentioned there are 3 business platforms. We have the integrated biologics business platform with our mammalian offering and our fill and finish, our drug product services, as we refer to it. Then we have our specialized modalities platform with mRNA, microbial processes, cell and gene therapy solutions. And advanced synthesis, and you mentioned this in the introduction, focuses on small molecules, difficult and complex to manufacture small molecules, high potency APIs, drug linkers, ADCs, and bioconjugates. We also offer spray drying services. And I think advanced synthesis is interesting because in particular for the ADC and the bioconjugation offering, which is growing very, very fast, 20+%, we're actually connecting the dots. We go from cell line developments, which happen in our integrated biologics unit, all the way to through payload manufacturing, obviously the mAb manufacturing, the conjugation to fill and finish services. So we really try to bring this One Lonza offering to life and create a seamless experience for our customers.
That 20% growth, that was in bioconjugation, did you say?
We estimate the market for bioconjugation is growing 20+%. It's a rapidly evolving modality. One of the fastest growing segments in the pharmaceutical industry. And this has a lot of momentum. We also look at China as a source of innovation, a lot of new innovation in this space coming from Chinese innovative companies. We're trying to stay on top of that. We have at the moment a market share of roughly 50%. We've been lucky enough to be early on involved in this really exciting new modality and trying to continue to grow with the market and make a difference for our customers with new technology, available capacity, and a seamless end-to-end integration of all of these important steps in the supply chain.
Very interesting. Be interesting to get your reflections on what you think are some of those key market trends at the moment. We've talked obviously about bioconjugation and the wave of innovation coming from China. What else would you say are some of those key factors, and what does that mean to how Lonza's positioning itself differently within such a large and fragmented marketplace?
Yeah, that's a great question, Luke. And I think there are a couple of really exciting themes you can see throughout the industry. One, I mentioned innovation, the pace of innovation, as well as the sources of innovation change. I mentioned China, but not only China. I think the trend towards biotech companies, startup companies really driving and innovating, and then eventually either through licensing or through M&A being picked up, continues to be very strong. It means for us that we need to stay agile. We need to connect with people in companies in all different segments of the pharmaceutical industry in order to continuously fill our pipeline. I think the second overriding trend, look, that I would highlight is with everything changing in the world. I think the trend towards a regionalization of supply chain is certainly pronounced. I think no matter who you talk to at this point in time, everybody believes that robust, strong supply chains are critical for business success. So customers look for local or regional sourcing solutions in many cases in order to manage uncertainties, economic uncertainties, geopolitical uncertainties. And by the way, I want to highlight this trend has been there probably since the year 2015, 2016. There were quite a number of external factors that have driven this. And the way Lonza is responding, we have already a pretty well set up global manufacturing footprint with assets in Asia Pacific, assets in the US, also assets in Europe, and we'll continue to strengthen this. In particular for advanced synthesis, it's going to be important to further globalize our setup. So these are probably the two most important trends that I felt were really pronounced, and then obviously the pace at which the industry is growing with all of this uncertainty, deploying capital at a fast pace. A lot of companies announced new capacity, and now also with customers investing in pharmaceutical manufacturing, an interesting dynamic. So these were probably the 2-3 things that I would like to highlight.
What's been the situation in the United States for you? We track on PharmaSource all of the announcements in the contract manufacturing space of the investment and the expansion which has been going on. And I think in the last 12 months, it was somewhere in the region of 3/4 of all publicly disclosed investment has been in the US. The same for Lonza, I presume.
As you know, we acquired a former Genentech site from Roche in Vacaville, which was good timing. We're investing 500 million Swiss francs in the asset to further upgrade it. The asset is available. We've successfully had first tech transfer, so this was a good move. We also have investment projects in the area of cell and gene that we conduct at the moment in Portsmouth. And the United States remains a very important market for us, where we look for further opportunities in terms of capital investments, organic growth, but also potential acquisitions. I think in the context of the new One Lonza strategy, our CEO, Wolfgang Wienand, also highlighted that aside from a continuous focus on organic growth, we want to look for attractive M&A opportunities. So yes, the United States is a very important market for us. I mentioned the regionalization trend, and I think it is important to be well positioned as a CDMO with well-established supply chains and manufacturing assets in all regions.
I mean, some of the other acquisitions and expansions, this bioconjugation, Stein, what do those investments signal about where customer demand is heading and how you're looking to capture that?
I think, important when you look at these specific investments, what we've been trying to do successfully over the last couple of years is create the ability for Lonza to provide to customers, to our clients, an integrated end-to-end offering, in particular for complex modalities and complex value chains. So if you take the example of our recent investments in BASF. We added capabilities on the mammalian side with a large-scale capacity expansion that came online. We actually also announced investments in additional bioconjugation capabilities, 3 suites, 1 customer-dedicated suite, 2 multi-client suites, and then in Stein, fill and finish capabilities, amongst others, also for ADCs. So what we try to do, and I mentioned that before, from cell line development through the development of mammalian or monoclonal antibody for our customers, to drug linker technology support, drug linker and payload manufacturing, conjugation, and then fill and finish services. We really try to build these capabilities out to support our customers on their growth journey.
Thank you. Talking about the customers, it'd be good to understand what initiatives or focuses you've been putting on how to try and make things easier for pharma and for the biotechs that work with you, because manufacturing is only becoming more complicated. You've got issues around HPAPI, safety and containment, for example, fragmented market access, sustainability and the path to net zero, lots and lots of demands, which are on the sponsors and then, of course, for the partners also. How do you try to help to solve those problems? Be interested if there's any particular initiatives or case studies you could speak to.
A few years ago, and we're certainly not alone, we started to collect very extensively our client feedback, not only through personal interaction, but also in a more formal setup, using our Lonza Promoter Score to identify how satisfied customers are with our services. I think a couple of areas that became obvious to us is speed matters to our customers. Whether you're an early phase or a client with a number of early phase programs and you want to get very quickly to IND, here it is about taking time out of the services that we provide, right? Value stream mapping, optimizing the timeline or the time required to provide a solution to the customers has been a key priority. Commercial and clinical and commercial manufacturing capabilities, deployment of assets at a very rapid pace, both in terms of planning it ahead of time, but also in terms of executing capital investment projects in a high quality, but also in a fast manner. The digitization, making the data, manufacturing data, other data available to our clients, supporting them through the process development with digital tools that we've rolled out, like with our AI-enabled route scouting or our design to optimize tool, or in the area of our mammalian offering, a AI-assisted facility fit assessment. So just trying to speed our service offering up, being close to our clients and understanding where the needs are has been a key priority. And with an uptick of our customer satisfaction score, I think we're on a very good track to address these needs. You mentioned sustainability and other aspects. I think it's constantly about reinventing yourself, reinventing your business model, staying ahead. So at Lonza, when you talk about sustainability, we committed to science-based targets, try to innovate in the terms of process efficiency, lean business management processes, and stay ahead of the game. So speed, digitalization, sustainability requirements, all of these good things. And this will not stop, right? There will be new demands, new interests from clients, and leading these conversations, identifying what new trends are is prerogative, I think, for any successful CDMO.
Could we talk a bit more about that digitization journey, which you mentioned you're on? So it'd be interesting to know a bit more about how you're using digital and AI to help to, I think you mentioned route scouting and optimization, real world examples of how you can compress timelines for drug developers.
Yeah, I think interesting is Lonza has already been, in particular, when you look at back-end services, quite engaged deploying new technologies like robotics process automation with incoming orders, or in our finance department, we've also deployed a quite substantial number of agentic AI solutions in order to really speed up back-end processes. I think that's something that is probably not unique to a pharmaceutical CDMO, but is something that, in the context of centralizing services, corporate services, is something that many companies are striving for. I mentioned a couple of examples where we try to be more specific. Two of these examples are, I mentioned the AI-enabled route scouting. So for our small molecule business, we try to identify optimal synthetic pathways earlier with our clients, and offer also high throughput experimentation, rapidly test hundreds of reactions conditions with minimal materials required. So what we try to do is use larger amounts of data and our experience to accelerate and speed up our clients' efforts to find an ideal synthetic pathway faster. I mentioned another example on our integrated biologics side is we perform technology fit assessments in order to speed up tech transfer timelines. And the last example I mentioned, designed to optimize, we essentially create a digital twin of processes and then optimize in silico, so to speak, this process, virtually simulate and refine the process, all in an effort to accelerate timelines and to become faster. And I think, so aside from, as I mentioned before, efficiency process improvements more in the back office, there are specific examples where companies can use AI, machine learning, other tools to speed up timelines for our customers, because in particular in development, time is money. You want to get as quickly as possible into the clinic, and at Lonza we try to actually use these tools to get this accomplished.
How reliable do you find those digital twins when you're creating a model and then you try to implement it? How similar are they in the real world?
Well, when you talk about digital twins, or when you talk about when you talk about simulations, you always have to keep in mind that you still need empirical data, real life data, in order to ensure that the simulation or the tool is actually close to reality. I can share with you from past experiences, also in other businesses, that I think almost like a trust and verify type of setup. You develop a tool, you develop a model, but I think it is always good to actually have in the background tests, scientific tests, statistical tests, lab experiments run to validate that the output from a digital twin or any sort of digital tool or machine learning or AI-based tool is actually validated. This will help you further refine your method overall and create long-term better results. So I think in particular at the beginning, it's important that you do both at the same time and continuously improve your statistical models or your machine learning or AI-based tools over time.
And what about when you're dealing with products at a commercial stage? How easy is that digital integration piece? Because it's something that we hear from sponsors all the time, is that they want everything to be fed direct in real time into the system, moving away from paper-based batch records.
This is probably a challenge for every larger established company. Lonza has certainly tons of data. We've been in the CDMO space since the 1980s. I think a key challenge for companies in that space and also for Lonza is accessibility of data. A lot of the data today is inaccessible because it exists in paper form or in forms that actually cannot be made use of. So I think a big challenge today is creating a data pool of your past and today's manufacturing data that is in fact accessible, and then use statistical tools, AI, machine learning, and apply it to this specific data pool. I think this will be getting easier over time as we all deploy new software, new systems, right, that make this more easily accessible. But I think certainly the topic of data access is, in particular for an established player with existing processes and established older facilities, something that we all have to work on, and that's what Lonza does. We look at digitizing our data sources and then apply these models to our large data pool that we definitely have.
Yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? Particularly when you've got so many sites, all from acquisitions or mergers and different platforms. I wonder if we could just talk a bit more about you personally, Christian. So, having spent 20 years at BASF, building global businesses before you joined Lonza 3 years ago, what made you want to move into this space? What made you want to join Lonza, and how different is it leading in the CDMO space compared to where you were before?
Yeah, interesting question, Luke. I'm obviously very grateful for the 20 years I spent with BASF. Over time, I inched closer and closer to the pharmaceutical industry at the end. So from 2018 to 2022, I led BASF's generic API and pharmaceutical excipients business. So it was interesting for me to transition from a product-centric business to a service business. You probably know, between the job I currently have, I also was lucky enough to lead Lonza's capsules and health ingredients business. So transitioning out of a product-focused business into a service-oriented business has been interesting.
What does that mean in terms of how the organization thinks about itself?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think at the end of the day, if you sell products, a lot of your business decisions are centered around your product offering. And I would argue the product offering in many ways is a bit more static. If you sell a range of hard empty capsules, or you sell a range of health ingredients or pharmaceutical excipients, while the portfolio evolves and develops, I think the pace is a little bit slower, and you think differently. You think very product centric. I think transitioning to a CDMO business, it's much more client focused. It's much more focused on the customer's needs. You build in more flexibility in your offering. It's not a hit or miss. Like if your product if your product specifications fits a specific application, in a product business, it's a hit or miss. In a CDMO business, what you try to do with your capabilities, make your systems, your processes, your offering fit the client's needs. So I think there is more agility. It's more client focused. I think also interesting because it's a combination of early phase focus, where you try to build a pipeline, and then developing this pipeline into a larger commercial business. That is not as pronounced in a product business, where you naturally focus more on the late phase part of the business, because this is where the volumes are, this is where utilization is. So I think the early phases are more frequently covered by distributors and other companies that actually really focus on this part. It's not fully integrated in your business model. And I think for CDMO business, this is very different. So it has been exciting, and I'm very grateful that I was able to transition into the CDMO space. Very, very exciting, high growth, and we do a lot of very important work as an industry, making medicines of tomorrow and supporting our customers on their growth journey.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier I think you called it the Lonza Customer Satisfaction Score.
Yeah, Lonza Promoter Score. Yeah,
Lonza Promoter Score. So I've done a lot of these interviews, and I think it's the first time that someone says we've got our own branded metric within the company, which is all about being customer focused. How important is that within the organization? There's obviously various different metrics you can measure your business by, but that promoter score, where does that sit in terms of the culture?
Well, I think it is a key. It's a key criteria. So the Lonza Promoter Score is something that we report out up to our board of directors. I think also publicly, Wolfgang Wieland, our CEO, has spoken about the Lonza Promoter Score. We have to constantly strive to become better, stay relevant, innovate, and reinvent ourselves. And receiving client feedback couldn't be more important. Of course, in face-to-face conversations, in order to hear it, sitting on the same table, trying to discuss how we can improve in a specific situation, but also systemically, where are areas where your company, your business can improve. So this is culturally for us super important. It's top of mind for the entire organization. It's part of our KPI deck that we look at, and I think important, Luke, to look at the relationship score. Right, once a year, you look at how the customer satisfaction score develops on a relationship level, and then we look at transactional scores. So regularly, we ask clients after they make an experience with a certain business process, right? The order to cash process, or the logistics and supply chain processes. We ask, how satisfied have you been with the service? And over time, you get a relatively precise indication where you need to make substantial step changes in order to improve the customer experience.
I noticed on your LinkedIn profile an Immanuel Kant quote: act in a way that the foundation of your intention can be adopted as a principle of a universal law, which is very philosophical, of course. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So I think for me, this is almost like a universalizability test, right? So Kant's principle is essentially a stress test for any business decision that you make. I think if you apply a strategy and it only works when others don't copy the strategy, or when you develop a strategy and this strategy would break the system if everybody copied this strategy, then it's probably not ethical or sustainable strategy. And in modern business, this translates into trust, into protecting certain systems and principles, and scale certain aspects beyond your own business. I think a great example, for example, great examples are data privacy and customer trust. Another example, ESG and sustainability. I mean, if you gain a competitive advantage because you're applying a less sustainable manufacturing process and you get a cost advantage, if everybody did that, it would be obviously bad for environment, bad for society. So so Immanuel Kant's I call it universalizability test, right?
It's like the Christian do unto others as you'd have them do unto yourself, isn't it?
To a degree, exactly. And when you talk about corporate governance, ethics, AI, responsible innovation, or you talk workplace culture, leadership, I think there are specific areas where, or fair competition. I think we want to win. We want to win badly. We want to be. I mentioned before, we want to outgrow the market. At the same time, Lonza has just been awarded, I think, for the fifth year in a row, is amongst the most ethical companies in the world. We want to do it within a certain framework, and this certain framework should apply to everybody in order to really maximize societal value out of what we do as a pharmaceutical CDMO. So this is where this is coming from, and a standard that I try to hold myself to.
Yeah. Christian, thank you so much for your time today. Fascinating speaking to you.
Thank you very much, Luke. It was a pleasure being on the podcast, and that was very enjoyable. Thank you so much.